The air in the Kansas City boarding house smelled like stale tobacco and regret, and Victoria Dalton knew she was being bartered like livestock before her aunt even finished the sentence. It was June of 1876, and the summer heat pressed against the thin walls as Aunt Margaret counted the bills a second time, her eyes gleaming with something that made Victoria's stomach turn. The man who had paid for her stood near the door, his greasy hair slicked back, his smile revealing tobacco-stained teeth that seemed to yellow further in the dim lamplight. His name was Silas Marrow, and everything about him made Victoria want to run. "She'll make you a fine wife," Aunt Margaret said, folding the money into her bodice. "Young, healthy, knows how to cook and clean. You got yourself a bargain, Mr. Marrow." Victoria pressed herself against the wall, her carpet bag clutched to her chest. She was 19 years old, and until 3 months ago, she had lived with her parents on a small farm outside of Springfield. Then the fever came. It took her mother first, then her father 2 weeks later. Aunt Margaret had arrived for the funeral, wearing black silk and false tears, offering to take Victoria in. Now she understood the offer had never been kindness. "I did not agree to this," Victoria said, her voice shaking. "You cannot sell me like property." "You have been living under my roof, eating my food," Aunt Margaret snapped. "This is how you repay your debt. Mr. Marrow here is willing to take you west, give you a home. You should be grateful." Silas Marrow moved closer, and Victoria caught the smell of unwashed skin and whiskey. "We leave on the morning train," he said, reaching for her arm. His grip was iron tight, his fingers digging into her flesh through her sleeve. "Best get used to following orders, girl. I do not tolerate disobedience." Victoria jerked away, but he held fast. "Please," she whispered, looking at her aunt one last time, hoping for some flicker of conscience. But Margaret had already turned away, counting her blood money again. That night, Victoria lay on the narrow cot in the corner of the boarding house room, listening to Silas snore in the chair by the door. He had tied a rope around her ankle, the other end wrapped around his wrist. She had tried to work the knot loose for hours, her fingers raw, but it would not budge. Tears slipped down her temples, pooling in her ears. She thought of her mother's gentle hands, her father's laugh. They would be ashamed of what Margaret had done. They would want her to fight. The train west was a rattling nightmare that lasted 3 days. Silas kept her close, his hand always on her arm or shoulder, marking his possession for anyone who looked their way. They changed trains in Denver, heading toward Nevada. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were cruel. He told her about his ranch outside a small town called Genoa, about how she would cook and clean and warm his bed, and if she tried to run, he would find her and make her sorry. Victoria watched the landscape change through the smudged window. The green of Missouri gave way to endless prairie, then to the stark beauty of mountains and high desert. It should have been breathtaking. Instead, it felt like watching her future disappear mile by mile. They arrived in Genoa on a Wednesday afternoon in late June. The town was small, nestled in a valley with mountains rising on either side. The main street was dusty, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to lean toward each other as if sharing secrets. A saloon, a general store, a livery, a church with a white steeple. Normal life happening all around her while her own spiraled into darkness. Silas hauled her off the train, his grip bruising. "We will get supplies, then head to the ranch," he said. "You keep your mouth shut, understand? Anyone asks, you are my mail-order bride. Came here, willing." She nodded, but her eyes scanned the street, looking for something, anything that might offer escape or help. That was when she saw him. He was tall, standing outside the livery with one boot propped against the wall, rolling a cigarette. His hat was pulled low, but she could see the strong line of his jaw, the weathered tan of someone who lived under the sun. He wore a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dark trousers, a gun belt sitting low on his hips. As they walked past, he looked up, and his eyes met hers. They were gray, like storm clouds, and something in them sharpened as he took in Silas's grip on her arm. The fear she knew must be written across her face. He straightened slowly, his hand stilling on the cigarette. Silas noticed. "Keep walking," he hissed at Victoria, pulling her faster. But she looked back over her shoulder, and the cowboy was still watching, his expression unreadable. The general store was dim and smelled of coffee and sawdust. Silas ordered supplies, while Victoria stood silent beside him. The shopkeeper, an older man with kind eyes, glanced at her several times. "New to town, miss?" he asked gently. Before she could answer, Silas cut in. "She is with me, my bride. No need for conversation." The shopkeeper's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing more, just wrapped the supplies in brown paper and took Silas's money. As they left, Victoria felt his gaze follow them, concerned. Outside, Silas led her toward a wagon hitched at the edge of town. "Get in," he ordered, shoving the supplies into the back. Victoria climbed up, her legs shaking. This was it. Once they left town, there would be no one to hear her scream, no one to help. She would disappear into his ranch, and no one would know or care. "Marrow!" The voice was deep, calm, but it carried an edge that made Silas freeze. Victoria turned to see the cowboy from the livery walking toward them, his stride easy but purposeful. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His hand rested casually near his gun. "Do I know you?" Silas asked, his tone aggressive. "No, but I know men like you." The cowboy stopped a few feet away. His gray eyes flicked to Victoria, then back to Silas. "That girl looks terrified. Seems odd for a bride." "My business is my own," Silas growled. "Move along." "Cannot do that." The cowboy tilted his head slightly. "See, I have seen you in town before. Last year, you had another woman. She disappeared after a few months. No one ever saw her again. Convenient." Victoria's blood went cold. "Another woman." Silas's jaw tightened, his face reddening. "You are making accusations you cannot prove, boy." "Maybe, but I am not letting you leave with her until I hear from her own mouth that she wants to go." The cowboy shifted his stance, and though he did not draw his gun, the threat was clear. Silas's hand moved toward his own weapon, but the cowboy was faster. In a blur of motion, his revolver was out and aimed at Silas's chest. "I would not," he said softly. The street had gone quiet. A few townspeople had stopped to watch, sensing trouble. Victoria found her voice, rough from disuse and fear. "I do not want to go with him. Please. My aunt sold me. I have no choice." The words tumbled out, desperate and raw. The cowboy's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Rage, maybe, or determination. "Sounds like she has made her position clear," he said to Silas. "Now, you have two choices. You can climb on that wagon and leave town alone, and count yourself lucky I am feeling merciful. Or you can try to draw on me, and we see how that works out for you." Silas was shaking with fury. "She is mine. I paid for her. Human beings cannot be bought. That makes any transaction void." The cowboy cocked his gun. "Choose fast. My patience is running thin." For a long moment, Victoria thought Silas would fight. His hand twitched near his gun, his eyes wild. But he must have seen something in the cowboy's face, some certainty that he would die if he tried. Slowly, he raised his hands. "This is not over," he hissed. "She is mine, legal or not. I will come back for what I paid for." "You do, and I will put a bullet in you." The cowboy gestured with his gun. "Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about mercy." Silas climbed onto the wagon, shooting Victoria a look of such hatred that she flinched. He snapped the reins, and the horses lurched forward, carrying him out of town in a cloud of dust. Victoria stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. The cowboy holstered his gun and turned to her. Up close, she could see the concern in his eyes, tempered with something gentler. You all right, miss? She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, she started to shake, the terror of the past days crashing over her all at once. Her knees buckled, and suddenly his hands were there, steady and warm, catching her before she fell. Easy now, he said, his voice soft. You are safe. I have got you. Victoria looked up at him, at this stranger who had just saved her life, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. He helped her to a bench outside the general store, easing her down carefully. Someone brought water, and she drank it gratefully, her hands still trembling. The cowboy crouched in front of her, giving her space but staying close enough to help if she needed it. My name is Cole Emerson, he said. I work at the ranch just north of here, the Double R. What is your name? Victoria. Victoria Dalton. She wiped at her eyes, embarrassed by her tears. I am sorry. I do not usually fall apart like this. You have nothing to apologize for. Cole's voice was firm. What happened to you was not right. No one should be treated that way. The shopkeeper came out, the same older man from before. Cole, should I fetch the sheriff? Cole glanced up. Not sure it would help, Mr. Peterson. The law is not always kind to women in situations like this. He looked back at Victoria. Do you have anywhere to go? Family? Victoria shook her head. No. My parents died 3 months ago. My aunt was all I had, and she... Her voice broke. She sold me to him. For money. Cole's jaw tightened. Then she is no family at all. He stood, running a hand through his hair, thinking. You need a safe place to stay. Marrow might come back, and even if he does not, you will need food and shelter. I can work, Victoria said quickly. I am a good cook. I can clean, mend clothes, anything. I do not want charity. Something that might have been admiration crossed Cole's face. That is good, because the ranch could use help. Mrs. Riley, the owner's wife, has been looking for someone to help with the house. Her rheumatism has been acting up. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. It would not be charity. You would earn your keep, and you would have a safe place to sleep. Separate quarters from the ranch hands. Respectable. Victoria looked at him, at this man who had stepped between her and danger without hesitation. She knew nothing about him except that he had saved her when he did not have to. Trust was a fragile thing, especially now, but something in his steady gaze made her want to believe. I would be grateful for the work, she said quietly. Cole nodded. Then let me get my horse and I will take you there. We can talk to Mrs. Riley together. He disappeared into the livery and emerged a few minutes later, leading a beautiful buckskin mare. He swung into the saddle with easy grace, then extended his hand down to Victoria. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. His grip was strong and sure as he pulled her up behind him. Hold on, he said, and she wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. It should have frightened her, being this close to a man after what she had been through, but somehow it did not. Maybe because his touch had been nothing but gentle. Maybe because he had asked before acting, giving her a choice. They rode out of town as the afternoon sun painted the mountains gold. The landscape was stunning, high desert, giving way to greener valleys where cattle grazed. The air smelled of sage and pine, so different from the thick humidity of Missouri. Victoria felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease just slightly. How long have you lived here? She asked, partly to distract herself, partly because she wanted to know about this man who had become her unexpected savior. 5 years, Cole said. Came out from Texas after the war. My family's ranch got burned during the conflict, and there was nothing left to go back to. I heard the Rileys were hiring, so I headed this way. You fought in the war? I did, for the Union. His voice was neutral, but she could hear old pain beneath it. Lost my brother at Shiloh. After that, I just wanted to be somewhere quiet, away from all the killing. I am sorry about your brother. Thank you. He was quiet for a moment. What about you? Where are you from originally? Missouri. My parents had a farm. It was not much, but it was ours. Victoria felt the familiar ache of loss. When they died, I thought my aunt would help me keep it, but she sold everything the week after the funeral, took the money and told me I was coming to live with her in Kansas City. I did not know she was planning to. You do not have to talk about it if you do not want to. Victoria rested her forehead against his shoulder blade, suddenly exhausted. I just want to forget it ever happened. Forgetting might not be possible, Cole said gently. But moving forward is. You get to decide what happens next. No one else. The Double R Ranch came into view as they crested a rise. It was bigger than Victoria had expected, a sprawling main house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, corrals full of horses, and pastures stretching toward the mountains. Smoke curled from the chimney, and she could see chickens pecking in a yard near the barn. Cole guided the horse toward the main house and dismounted, then helped Victoria down. Her legs were shaky from the ride and from everything else, but she forced herself to stand straight. First impressions mattered, and she needed this to work. A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a bun and a face that spoke of both kindness and no-nonsense practicality. This had to be Mrs. Riley. Cole, you are back earlier than expected, she said. Then her eyes landed on Victoria. And you have brought someone. Mrs. Riley, this is Victoria Dalton. She is new to town and in need of work. I remembered you mentioning needing help with the house. Cole glanced at Victoria, encouraging. Miss Dalton is a hard worker and a good cook. I thought maybe you two could discuss an arrangement. Mrs. Riley studied Victoria with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything. Victoria fought the urge to squirm under that gaze. Then the older woman's expression softened. You look like you have had a rough time of it, girl, she said, not unkindly. Come inside. We will talk over tea. The house was warm and welcoming, with worn furniture that spoke of years of use and care. Mrs. Riley directed Victoria to sit at the kitchen table while she put the kettle on. Cole leaned against the doorframe, his hat in his hands, waiting. Now then, Mrs. Riley said, setting out cups. Cole does not usually bring strangers home, so I am guessing there is more to this story. You want to tell me what happened? Victoria took a breath and told it all, from her parents' deaths to her aunt's betrayal, to Silas Marrow, and the money that changed hands. She kept her voice steady, but it was hard. Saying it aloud made it real in a way that hurt. When she finished, Mrs. Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed Victoria's hand. That woman should be ashamed of herself, she said fiercely. And that man Marrow, if he shows his face here, he will regret it. My husband does not tolerate that kind of evil. I just need a chance to work, Victoria said. I promise I will earn my place. I will not be a burden. Oh, honey, you would not be a burden. I have been needing help for months now, but the right person has not come along. Mrs. Riley poured the tea. My hands are not what they used to be, and there is more work than I can manage. If you are willing, I can offer you room and board, plus a small wage. Nothing fancy, but honest work. Relief flooded through Victoria, so intensely she felt dizzy. I accept. Thank you, Mrs. Riley. You will not regret this. Call me Ruth, the older woman said with a smile. Now let me show you where you will be staying. The room was small but clean, tucked at the back of the house with a window that looked out toward the mountains. There was a bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand, a dresser, and a chair. To Victoria, who had spent the last few nights terrified and bound, it looked like paradise. You settle in, Ruth said. Supper is in 2 hours. Nothing fancy tonight, just stew. Tomorrow, We will talk about your duties and get you properly situated." When Ruth left, Victoria sank onto the bed and let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since her parents died. She cried for what she had lost, for the terror of the past days, for the kindness of strangers who had no reason to help her. She cried until she was empty, and then she washed her face in the basin and unpacked her meager belongings. Her mother's brush, a few dresses, a book of poetry her father had given her. Not much to show for 19 years of life, but it was hers. That evening, she met the rest of the household. Thomas Riley was a big man with a booming laugh and a handshake that could crush bones. He welcomed Victoria warmly, telling her that any friend of Cole's was welcome at the Double R. There were 4 ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse, including Cole. The other 3 were friendly enough, curious about the new arrival but respectful. Victoria found herself watching Cole throughout the meal. He was quiet, letting others talk, but when he spoke, people listened. He had a dry sense of humor that surprised her, making her smile despite everything. Several times she caught him looking at her, and something in his expression made her heart do strange things. After supper, she helped Ruth clean up, learning the layout of the kitchen and where things were kept. Her hands remembered the familiar motions of washing dishes, and it soothed her. This was something she knew, something she could control. Cole found her drying the last pot. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. "Outside?" Victoria glanced at Ruth, who nodded encouragingly. She followed Cole onto the porch, where the night air was cool and sweet, with the smell of hay. Above, the stars were brighter than she had ever seen, scattered across the sky like diamond dust. "I wanted to make sure you are settling in all right," Cole said, leaning against the porch rail, "and to tell you that you are safe here. Marrow would be a fool to come after you, but if he does, he will have to go through me and every man on this ranch." "Why are you doing this?" Victoria asked. The question had been building all evening. "You do not know me. You risked your life standing up to Silas. Why?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon. "My mother was sold when I was a boy," he said finally. "Not the same way as you, but close enough. My father died, and his brother claimed ownership of her as part of the estate. Said she owed a debt. She tried to fight it, but the law was not on her side. She ended up married to a man who beat her bloody every Saturday night." Victoria's breath caught. "Cole, she died when I was 12. Fell down the stairs, they said, but I knew better." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were full of old grief and steel determination. "I was too young to help her, but I am not too young anymore. When I see a woman in trouble, I do not walk away. I cannot." Understanding washed over Victoria, painful and profound. "I am sorry that happened to you." To her, "Me too." Cole's voice was rough, but it taught me something. It taught me that standing by is the same as being guilty. So I do not stand by anymore. Victoria moved closer to him, drawn by his honesty, his pain that echoed her own. "Thank you," she said softly, "for standing up, for caring." "You do not have to thank me, Victoria. You do not owe me anything." But she felt like she did. She owed him her freedom, maybe her life. That was a debt she did not mind carrying. The days turned into weeks, and Victoria settled into a rhythm at the Double R. She woke before dawn to help Ruth prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, and then spent her days cooking, cleaning, mending, and learning all the tasks that kept a ranch house running. Ruth was patient and kind, teaching her the tricks of baking at high altitude, how to get bloodstains out of shirts, which herbs grew in the garden for seasoning and medicine. The work was hard, but Victoria welcomed it. It kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. At night, she fell into bed exhausted, and that meant she did not lie awake remembering Silas's tobacco-stained smile or her aunt's cold eyes. Cole was always around, fixing fences or training horses or riding out to check on cattle. Victoria found herself looking for him, tracking his movements across the ranch. Sometimes he would catch her watching, and he would smile, that slow, easy smile that made her stomach flutter. Other times, She would look up from kneading bread to find him watching her, his expression thoughtful. They fell into a habit of talking in the evenings after supper. Cole would find her on the porch or in the garden, and they would sit together as the sun set, sharing stories. He told her about growing up in Texas, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the war and the things he had seen. She told him about her parents, about her father teaching her to read using newspapers, and her mother's garden that always smelled like roses and mint. "You miss them a lot," Cole said one evening. It was not a question. "Every day," Victoria admitted. "Sometimes I forget they are gone, and I turn to tell them something. And then I remember. It is like losing them all over again. That feeling gets easier with time. Not gone, but easier." Cole picked a blade of grass and twisted it between his fingers. "You carry them with you, in the things they taught you, the way you see the world. They are not really gone as long as you remember." Victoria looked at him, at the way the fading light caught in his dark hair, at the serious set of his mouth. "You are wiser than you look, Cole Emerson." He laughed, surprised. "Is that your way of calling me old?" "I am saying you have an old soul. There is a difference." "Well, you have an old soul too, Victoria Dalton. But you also have hope in your eyes, and that is rarer than you might think." She wanted to tell him that the hope had only come back because of him, because he had shown her that there were still good men in the world. But the words felt too big, too vulnerable, so she just smiled and let the moment stretch between them, comfortable and warm. July gave way to August, and the heat pressed down on the valley like a weight. Victoria learned to move slower during the hottest part of the day, to drink plenty of water, to appreciate the cool mornings and evenings. She also learned the rhythms of the ranch, the way the cattle needed to be moved to different pastures, the way the horses got skittish before a storm, the way the men worked from before sunrise until after sunset and never complained. She noticed, too, the way Cole was different from the other hands. They were good men, hard workers, but Cole had something extra, a quiet authority that made Thomas Riley trust him with the difficult jobs, a gentleness with the horses that had even the most spirited animals calming under his touch, a sense of honor that meant he would rather take a beating than break his word. Victoria found herself falling for him, slowly at first and then all at once. It was in the way he always tipped his hat to her when he passed, the way he made sure she had enough firewood for the stove, the way he listened when she spoke like her words mattered. It was in his laugh and his rare smiles and the way his hands looked gentle and strong at the same time. But she did not know if he felt the same. He was kind to everyone. Maybe his attention to her was just part of his protective nature. Maybe he saw her as someone he had saved, a responsibility, but nothing more. One evening in mid-August, a rider came galloping up to the ranch just as they were finishing supper. Victoria recognized him as the shopkeeper from town, Mr. Peterson, and her stomach dropped. He would not be here at this hour unless something was wrong. Thomas stepped outside to meet him, and Victoria watched through the window as they talked. She saw Thomas's expression darken, saw him glance back at the house. Then Cole joined them, and all three men talked in low, urgent voices. When they came inside, Thomas looked grim. "Victoria, Mr. Peterson brought news from town. Silas Marrow came back. He has been at the saloon for 2 days, drinking and talking about how someone stole his property. He is making threats." Fear crawled up Victoria's spine. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that means you do not go into town alone," Cole said flatly. "He has been asking about you, about where you are staying. Some of the folks in town have been keeping quiet, but enough people know you are here that word might reach him. What am I supposed to do?" Victoria hated the tremor in her voice. She had started to feel safe, and now it was all crashing down. "You stay on the ranch," Thomas said firmly. "We will keep watch, and if Marrow sets foot on this property, we will deal with him, legal or otherwise." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "There is one other thing. The sheriff suggested that if Miss Dalton were married, it would complicate Marrow's claim. A married woman is under her husband's protection, not available to be claimed by someone who thinks he bought her. The room went silent. Victoria felt everyone's eyes on her, and her cheeks burned. I am not going to marry someone just to avoid Silas Marrow, she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. That would just be another form of being sold. What if you married someone you wanted to marry? Ruth said gently. She was looking between Victoria and Cole with an expression that suggested she saw more than either of them had admitted. Someone you trusted. Victoria's eyes went to Cole without her permission. He was staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Victoria and I need to talk, Cole said abruptly. Alone. They walked out into the twilight, away from the house toward the corrals. The horses nickered softly as they passed. Victoria's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. I know this is not how anyone dreams it should happen, Cole said when they were far enough away that no one could hear. But I want you to consider it. Marrying me. Victoria stared at him. Cole, let me finish. He took off his hat, running his fingers through his hair in a gesture she had learned meant he was nervous. I am not asking because of some obligation or because I think you need rescuing. I am asking because over these past weeks, I have come to care for you. More than care. I think about you all the time. When I wake up, I look forward to seeing you at breakfast. When I am out working, I count the hours until I can talk to you again. You make me laugh. You make me want to be a better man. Victoria could barely breathe. You care for me. I am falling in love with you, Victoria. Maybe I already have. Cole stepped closer, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. If you married me, it would not be in name only, unless that is what you wanted. I would court you proper, give you time, let you decide how this goes. But you would have my name and my protection, and Marrow could not touch you. And if I never felt the same way you do? Victoria asked, even though it was a lie because she already did feel the same way. You would be trapped. I would not be trapped. I would be married to a woman I love who is trying to figure out her feelings. I would wait as long as it took. His voice dropped, rough with emotion. But I need to know if there is any chance you could feel something for me. Because if there is not, I will find another way to keep you safe. I will not force you into anything. Victoria reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar through his eyebrow. His eyes closed briefly at her touch, and she felt him tremble. You do not have to wait for me to figure out my feelings, she whispered. I already know. I have been falling in love with you too, Cole. I was just afraid to say it. His eyes snapped open, searching hers. You mean that? Every word. She smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. You saved me, but more than that, you gave me back myself. You treated me like I mattered, like my choices were mine to make. You made me feel safe. How could I not love you? Cole made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob, and then his arms were around her, pulling her close. Victoria buried her face in his chest, feeling his heart racing against her cheek. His hand cupped the back of her head, gentle and protective. I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this, he murmured into her hair. I swear it. I know you will. Victoria pulled back just enough to look up at him. So yes, Cole Emerson, I will marry you. The kiss was soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. His lips were warm, and he tasted like coffee and hope. When they broke apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers, both of them smiling like fools. We should go tell the others, he said. But he did not move. Neither did she. They stayed there in the gathering dark, holding each other, marveling at how quickly life could change from nightmare to dream. The wedding was arranged quickly, within a week. The town of Genoa had a circuit preacher who came through once a month, and by luck or providence, he was due to arrive that Saturday. Ruth took charge of the preparations with the efficiency of a general marshaling troops. She let out one of her own dresses for Victoria, a beautiful pale blue that matched her eyes. The men cleaned up the barn for a celebration, and Ruth baked enough food to feed half the territory. Victoria felt like she was floating through those days. Cole was always nearby, stealing moments with her when they could slip away from prying eyes. They talked about the future, about maybe building their own small house on the ranch property, about what kind of life they wanted. He told her he had been saving his wages for years and had enough to give them a solid start. She told him she did not need much, just him and a safe place to call home. On Friday evening, the night before the wedding, Ruth shooed the men out of the house and insisted Victoria sit down for what she called a talk. "I know you have been through a terrible experience," Ruth began gently, "and I do not want to pry, but I need to know if you understand what marriage entails. The physical side of things." Victoria felt her cheeks heat. "My mother talked to me about it before she died. I understand the basics." "Good, because it should never be something done in fear or obligation. You have a right to your own body, even in marriage. If Cole is the man I think he is, he will understand that and be patient." Ruth squeezed her hand. "But I also want you to know that with the right person, the physical side of marriage can be a joy. It is a way of showing love, of being close. So do not let what almost happened with that monster marrow poison what you could have with Cole." Victoria swallowed hard. "I trust Cole. I know he would never hurt me." "Then trust yourself too," Ruth said. "You are stronger than you know, girl. You have survived things that would break most people. Now you get to have happiness. Let yourself have it." That night, Victoria lay in her bed for the last time as Victoria Dalton, unmarried woman. Tomorrow she would be Victoria Emerson. The name sounded right, felt right. She thought of Cole, of his gray eyes and his gentle hands, and the way he looked at her like she was something precious. She thought of the life they would build together, and for the first time since her parents died, she felt truly excited about the future. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the August sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Victoria woke to find Ruth already bustling around, preparing breakfast and muttering about all the things that still needed to be done. She helped where she could, but Ruth kept shooing her away, telling her to go make herself beautiful. In her room, Victoria washed carefully and put on the blue dress. It fit perfectly, and when she looked at herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked happy. When had that happened? There was a soft knock on the door, and Ruth came in carrying a small box. "This was my mother's," she said, opening it to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pearl pendant. "I wore it at my wedding, and I thought you might like to wear it at yours. Something borrowed." Victoria felt tears threaten. "Ruth, I cannot." "You can and you will. Consider it a gift from a friend." Ruth fastened it around Victoria's neck, then stepped back to admire her work. "You are a beautiful bride, Victoria. Cole is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Victoria said softly. The ceremony was held outside under a huge cottonwood tree near the house. The whole ranch was there, along with several folks from town who had heard about the wedding and wanted to show their support. Mr. Peterson was there, beaming, the blacksmith and his wife, the school teacher, even the sheriff, keeping a wary eye out in case Marrow tried anything. Victoria stood at the front, her hands trembling slightly, and watched Cole walk toward her. He was wearing his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed, his face shaved clean. But it was his eyes that captured her, full of love and promise and something that made her feel like the only woman in the world. The preacher was an older man with a kind voice who spoke about love and commitment and partnership. Victoria barely heard the words. She was too focused on Cole, on the way his hand felt when he took hers, strong and steady. When it came time for the vows, his voice was clear and firm. "I, Cole Emerson, take you, Victoria Dalton, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. In sickness and health, in joy and sorrow, I will be yours. Victoria's voice shook, but she got through her own vows, meaning every word. I, Victoria Dalton, take you, Cole Emerson, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, stand beside you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. In sickness and health, in joy and sorrow, I will be yours. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Cole cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle, and kissed her in front of everyone. It was deeper than their first kiss, full of promise and passion and a future spreading out before them. When they broke apart, cheers erupted around them, and Victoria laughed, breathless and dizzy with happiness. The celebration lasted well into the evening. There was music and dancing, more food than anyone could eat, and enough laughter to chase away any lingering shadows. Victoria danced with Cole until her feet hurt, then danced some more. Thomas gave a rambling, emotional toast about how Cole was like a son to him and how he could not be happier to have Victoria as part of the family. Ruth cried happy tears and insisted on taking Victoria aside every 10 minutes to make sure she was all right. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Cole took Victoria's hand and led her away from the crowd. They walked toward the small cabin that Thomas had given them as a wedding present, one of the outbuildings that had been hastily but lovingly converted into a home. It had a bed, a stove, a table and chairs, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. It was perfect. Inside, Cole lit a lamp, and warm light filled the space. He turned to Victoria, and suddenly the reality of the moment seemed to hit them both. They were married, alone, the night stretching ahead. "Are you nervous?" Cole asked softly. "A little," Victoria admitted. "But not afraid. Not with you." He crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. "We do not have to do anything tonight except sleep. I meant what I said about giving you time, about letting you decide." Victoria looked up at him, at this good, patient, wonderful man who loved her. "I know you meant it, but I do not want to wait, Cole. I want to be your wife in every way. I want to start our life together tonight." His eyes darkened with emotion and desire. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He kissed her then, slow and deep, his hands sliding into her hair. Victoria melted into him, letting herself feel everything she had been holding back. The fear was gone. In its place was trust and love and a hunger to be close to him, to show him without words what he meant to her. What happened next was tender and sweet, full of whispered words and gentle touches. Cole was patient and careful, making sure she was comfortable, that she felt safe. There were moments of awkwardness as they learned each other, but there was also laughter and wonder and a sense of rightness that made Victoria's heart ache in the best way. Afterward, they lay tangled together. The lamp burned low, the night cool through the open window. Cole traced patterns on her shoulder, and Victoria listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat under her cheek. "I love you," she whispered. "I do not think I say it enough." "You say it every time you smile at me," Cole murmured. "Every time you laugh at my terrible jokes. Every time you trust me with your heart. I hear it." Victoria tilted her head back to look at him. "You are everything I never knew I needed." "Same goes for you." He kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Emerson. Tomorrow, our real life begins." "Mrs. Emerson." Victoria smiled and closed her eyes, feeling safer and more loved than she ever had. Tomorrow and all the days after stretched before them, full of possibility. The autumn came to Genoa with a flourish of gold and red in the cottonwoods and aspens. The air turned crisp, and the mountains got their first dustings of snow on the highest peaks. Victoria settled into married life with a contentment that sometimes surprised her. After everything she had been through, she had not been sure happiness was possible. But here she was, waking up every morning next to a man who loved her, working alongside Ruth during the day, and spending her evenings with Cole, talking and laughing and building a life together. The cabin became a home. Victoria sewed curtains from fabric Ruth gave her, and Cole built shelves for her books and her mother's brush and the small treasures they began to accumulate. He was good with his hands, patient and precise. She loved watching him work, the way he measured twice and cut once, the way he stepped back to make sure everything was level and right. They fell into rhythms and routines. Mornings, they walked to the main house together for breakfast with the Rileys and the Hands. During the day, Victoria worked in the house while Cole worked with the cattle and horses. Evenings, they had to themselves, cooking dinner in their cabin or walking through the ranch as the sun set. At night, they learned each other in the intimate dark, and Victoria discovered that Ruth had been right. With the right person, physical love was a joy, a way of expressing things too big for words. Silas Marrow never came back. The sheriff eventually rode out to tell them that Marrow had left Nevada, heading back to California. Apparently, word had gotten around about what he had tried to do, and several of his business partners had cut ties. Without money or reputation, he had slunk away like the coward he was. Victoria felt a weight lift when she heard the news. She had not realized how much she had been looking over her shoulder, waiting for him to reappear. Now, she could finally breathe free. Winter came hard and fast. Snow buried the ranch in December, and for weeks they were largely cut off from town. But Victoria did not mind. The cabin was warm, the pantry was stocked, and she had Cole. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, or playing cards, or simply sitting in comfortable silence. Cole taught her to play chess, and she turned out to have a knack for it, beating him more often than not. "You are a hustler," he complained one evening after she checkmated him for the third time in a row. "You pretended to be bad at this so I would let my guard down." Victoria laughed. "I did no such thing. You are just a terrible teacher who explained all your strategies." He lunged for her, and she shrieked with laughter as he tickled her until she begged for mercy. They ended up tangled on the rug in front of the fire, breathless and grinning. "I love you," Cole said, brushing her hair back from her face. "Even when you are a card shark and a chess hustler and too smart for your own good." "I love you too," Victoria said, "even when you are a sore loser." He kissed her, and the chess game was forgotten. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born, foals wobbled on spindly legs, and the meadows turned green almost overnight. Victoria planted a garden behind the cabin, putting in vegetables and herbs, and in a corner by itself, roses. She had gotten the cuttings from Ruth, but they came originally from her mother's garden, saved and passed down. When they bloomed in June, pale pink and fragrant, Victoria cried happy tears. Cole found her there one evening, kneeling in the dirt, her hands muddy, her face turned toward the sunset. He sat down beside her, not caring about his clean clothes. "They are beautiful," he said, nodding at the roses. "My mother loved roses. She said they reminded her that even thorny things could bloom." Victoria leaned against him. "I wish she could have met you. She would have loved you. I wish I could have met her too. And your father. I would have liked to ask his permission to marry you proper." Cole wrapped his arm around her. "But I think they know, somehow. And I think they approve. I think so too." That summer was one of the happiest times of Victoria's life. The ranch thrived, the weather was perfect, and she and Cole grew even closer. They talked about the future, about maybe starting a family someday, though Victoria was not in any rush. She was only 20 now, and she wanted time to just be young and in love and free. But fate had other plans. In late August, Victoria started feeling unwell. She was tired all the time, queasy in the mornings, and her body felt strange in ways she could not quite define. At first, she thought it was something she ate, But when the symptoms persisted, Ruth took one look at her and smiled knowingly. "You are with child, dear," she said gently. "Congratulations!" Victoria stared at her, stunned. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor, but I have had 3 children of my own. I know the signs." Ruth took her hand. "How do you feel about it?" "I do not know," Victoria admitted. "Surprised, scared, happy, I think." She put a hand on her stomach, marveling. A baby! She and Cole had made a baby. Those are all normal feelings. Wait until the shock wears off. The happiness will come through. Ruth hugged her. "Cole is going to be over the moon." He was. When Victoria told him that evening, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. Then he immediately put her down, worried he had hurt her or the baby. "Cole, I am pregnant. Not made of glass," Victoria said, amused. "I know, but I do not want to take chances." He knelt down and pressed his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I already love you more than anything." Victoria ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full it ached. "You are going to be an amazing father. I am going to try." He looked up at her, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you, Victoria. For this. For everything. We made this baby together. You do not have to thank me." But he kissed her stomach gently anyway, and Victoria knew their child would be loved beyond measure. The pregnancy was not easy. Victoria was sick almost every day through the fall, and by winter she was huge and uncomfortable. Her back ached, her ankles swelled, and she could not sleep for more than an hour at a time. Cole was endlessly patient, rubbing her feet and her back, making her tea, holding her hair when she was sick. "I am sorry you have to deal with this," Victoria said one particularly bad night. "I am a nightmare. You are growing our child. You could not be a nightmare if you tried." Cole kissed her temple. "And this is temporary. Soon we will have a baby, and this will all be worth it." The baby came in early March of 1878, during a late winter storm that dumped 2 feet of snow on the ranch. Victoria's labor started in the middle of the night, and by dawn, she was in agony. Ruth and the midwife from town, who had come to stay the last few weeks, took over, sending Cole to pace outside like a caged animal. It was long and hard, and there were moments Victoria thought she could not do it. But every time she wanted to give up, she thought of Cole, of their child, of the life they were building. She bore down and pushed and fought with everything she had. Finally, as the storm began to clear and pale sunlight filtered through the window, a sharp, angry cry filled the cabin. Victoria collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and shaking. "It is a boy," the midwife announced, holding up a squirming, red-faced infant. "A healthy, strong boy." Ruth cleaned him quickly and laid him on Victoria's chest. She looked down at her son, at his tiny fists and his dark hair and his scrunched-up face, and fell in love all over again. "Cole," she said weakly. "Someone get Cole." He burst through the door like the cabin was on fire, his eyes wild. When he saw Victoria holding the baby, he stopped dead, his expression transforming into something like awe. "Is that our son?" he whispered. "This is our son." Victoria smiled through her tears. "Come meet him." Cole crossed to the bed, slowly, reverently. He reached out a finger and the baby grabbed it with surprising strength. Cole let out a choked laugh. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe this is real." "Believe it," Victoria said. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months, but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Cole said, "How about Samuel? It was my brother's name, the one who died at Shiloh." Victoria looked at her husband, at the grief and love warring in his eyes. "Samuel," she repeated. "Samuel Emerson. It is perfect." Cole leaned down and kissed her, gentle and grateful. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For him, for everything. I love you so much." "I love you too." The first weeks with Samuel were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, and more love than Victoria thought her heart could hold. Cole was an attentive father, always willing to walk the floor with a fussy baby, or change diapers, or sing lullabies in his off-key voice. Victoria watched him with their son and felt her love for him deepen in ways she had not thought possible. Spring turned to summer, and Samuel grew from a tiny, fragile newborn into a plump, happy baby with his father's gray eyes and his mother's smile. He was curious and alert, always watching everything with wide eyes. Ruth declared him the smartest baby she had ever seen, and Thomas built him a cradle that could rock on its own. One evening in July, Victoria was sitting outside the cabin, nursing Samuel while Cole worked on fixing the front step. The sun was setting, painting everything gold, and she felt a peace so deep it was almost spiritual. "Do you ever think about how different life could have been?" she asked Cole. "If you had not been in town that day, if you had not stood up to Silas." Cole looked up from his work, his expression serious. "All the time. And it terrifies me, thinking about you ending up with that monster. But it also makes me grateful for every single day we have." "Me too." Victoria looked down at Samuel, who was nursing contentedly. "I was so scared that day. I thought my life was over. But it was actually just beginning." "Mine too," Cole said softly. "I was just going through the motions before I met you. Working, existing, but not really living." "You changed everything, Victoria." "We saved each other," Victoria said. "That is what I like to think. You saved me from Silas, and I saved you from loneliness." Cole set down his tools and came to sit beside her. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, careful not to disturb Samuel. "I like that," he said. "We saved each other." They sat there as the stars came out. A family, whole and happy, and exactly where they were meant to be. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Samuel grew into a toddler, then a little boy, curious and fearless, always underfoot and asking a million questions. Cole taught him to ride almost as soon as he could walk, and Victoria's heart was in her throat every time she watched her tiny son on the back of a horse. But Cole was patient and careful, and Samuel turned out to be a natural horseman. When Samuel was 3, Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1881, she gave birth to a daughter they named Clara, after Cole's mother. She had Victoria's dark hair and Cole's eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. The cabin was too small for 4, so Cole and Thomas built an addition, adding 2 bedrooms and expanding the main room. It took all summer, but by the time Clara was crawling, they had a proper house. Victoria made it a home, filling it with laughter and love and the chaos of raising 2 young children. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, and times when money was tight. There were childhood illnesses that had Victoria praying through the night and Cole riding for the doctor through storms. There were disagreements and misunderstandings, and the normal struggles of any marriage. But through it all, they held on to each other. They had promised to be partners, and they kept that promise. Samuel grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He was tall and strong, with Cole's quiet competence and Victoria's quick mind. At 18, he started courting the daughter of the neighboring ranch, a sweet girl named Anna who made him smile like a fool. Victoria watched him fall in love and remembered her own young love, and she was happy for him. Clara was different, spirited and wild, always climbing trees and racing her horse and declaring she was never going to get married because boys were stupid. Victoria tried to gently suggest that she might change her mind someday, but Cole just laughed and said Clara could do whatever she wanted. "She reminds me of you," he told Victoria one evening. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, the same way they had for 30 years. Their hair had streaks of gray now, and their faces had lines, but they still fit together perfectly. Me? I was never that wild, Victoria protested. Maybe not wild, but brave, determined. You knew your own mind. Cole took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Clara gets that from you. She knows who she is and does not apologize for it. When did our children grow up? Victoria asked softly. It feels like just yesterday Samuel was a baby, and now he is talking about marriage. Time goes fast, Cole agreed, but I would not change a moment of it. Well, maybe I would have changed those 6 months when both kids had chickenpox at the same time. That was rough. Victoria laughed. That was not my favorite time either. She leaned her head on his shoulder. But overall, we have had a good life, have we not? The best life, Cole said. Better than I ever dreamed. And it is not over yet. We still have years ahead of us. Years to watch Samuel get married and have babies of his own. Years to see what Clara does with her life. Years to grow old together. Victoria lifted her head to look at him. I still love you, Cole Emerson, just as much as I did the day we got married. I love you too, Victoria. More if that is possible. He kissed her, sweet and familiar. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Even better than that time you won first prize at the county fair for your horse? Even better than that. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the ranch that had been their home for so many years. Samuel married Anna in the summer of 1895 in a ceremony under the same cottonwood tree where Victoria and Cole had married all those years ago. It was a full circle moment that made Victoria cry happy tears. Samuel and Anna moved into a small house on the edge of the ranch, and a year later they had a son they named Cole, after his grandfather. Holding her grandson for the first time, Victoria felt the weight of history, the way love and life continued generation after generation. She thought of her own parents, wished they could see this, and felt them with her in spirit. Cole was a doting grandfather, spoiling little Cole shamelessly. He carved the boy wooden horses and taught him to whistle and told him stories about the old days. Victoria watched them together and felt her heart swell with gratitude for this life they had built. Clara, true to her word, showed no interest in marriage. Instead, she became the best horse trainer in the territory, with people bringing their animals from miles around for her to work her magic. She was happy and independent, and Victoria was proud of the woman she had become. As the new century approached, Victoria and Cole slowed down. They handed more of the ranch work to Samuel and the younger hands, spending their days in quieter pursuits. They tended the garden, read books, took walks through the valley. They talked about the past and the future and all the moments in between. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, Victoria said, "Do you remember the first time we talked? Really talked?" "Of course. You had just arrived, and I found you on the porch after supper. You looked so lost, but also so determined not to break." Cole smiled at the memory. "I knew right then that you were special. I thought you were just being kind. I did not dare hope you might feel something more. I felt something more from the first moment I saw you, Victoria. When Marrow was dragging you down the street and you looked back at me, I felt like I had been hit by lightning. I knew I could not let him take you." Victoria reached for his hand, their fingers interweaving with the ease of decades. "You saved my life that day. You saved mine too, just in a different way." Cole brought her hand to his lips. "Every day with you has been a gift. I want you to know that. No matter what happens, no matter how much time we have left, I am grateful for every single moment." "We still have plenty of time," Victoria said, but her voice caught. They were not young anymore. The future was not the endless expanse it once seemed. "I hope so," Cole said. "But either way, when my time comes, I will go knowing I had the great love of my life. Not everyone gets that, Victoria. We are the lucky ones." She kissed him then, there on the porch as the stars came out, the same way they had kissed 1,000 times before. And in that kiss was everything, all their years together, all their love and laughter and tears. It was a kiss that said, "Thank you and I love you, and I would choose you again and again." They sat there until the night grew cold, holding each other, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life more beautiful than either could have imagined. The years continued to unfold. More grandchildren came, filling the ranch with noise and joy. Clara eventually surprised everyone by falling in love with a quiet veterinarian who appreciated her wild spirit, and they married in a small ceremony that was perfect for them. They had twin daughters who were as spirited as their mother. Victoria and Cole aged gracefully, their hair turning white, their steps slowing. But their love never dimmed. They still held hands. They still sat on the porch watching sunsets. They still chose each other, every single day. When Cole's health began to fail, Victoria nursed him with the same tenderness he had always shown her. She sat by his bedside, reading to him, telling him stories, reminding him of all their adventures. He smiled and held her hand and told her she was beautiful, even now. "I am not ready to let you go," Victoria whispered one evening, tears streaming down her face. "I know," Cole said softly. His voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. "But Victoria, you are going to be all right. You are the strongest person I know. And I will always be with you, even when you cannot see me. I love you so much. I love you too. From the first moment to this one, to whatever comes after." He squeezed her hand with what strength he had left. "Thank you for saying yes that day. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for this life." Victoria kissed him, tasting salt and sorrow and love. "I would do it all again. Every moment. You are my heart, Cole Emerson." He smiled, and then his eyes closed, and he was gone. Victoria grieved deeply, but she did not break. She had her children and grandchildren around her, and she had the memories of 50 years of love. She kept the ranch running with Samuel's help. She tended the garden and the roses. She sat on the porch in the evenings and talked to Cole as if he were still beside her, because in a way he was. On a cool autumn evening, 5 years after Cole passed, Victoria sat in her favorite chair on the porch, a blanket over her lap. Samuel found her there, peaceful and still, a small smile on her face. She had passed quietly in her sleep, and those who loved her took comfort in knowing she was reunited with the man she had loved for a lifetime. They buried her beside Cole under the cottonwood tree, where their love story had begun and where it would rest forever. The whole town came to pay respects, and the stories flowed, stories of courage and love and two people who had saved each other. Samuel stood with his arm around his sister, watching as the sun set over the valley. "They had a good life," he said. "The best," Clara agreed. "They showed us what love should look like." And the ranch that Victoria and Cole had built together continued, filled with their descendants, their legacy of love passing from generation to generation. The roses bloomed every summer, pink and fragrant, a reminder that even thorny things could bloom beautiful. And in the evening, when the wind whispered through the cottonwood trees, some said you could still hear laughter, the sound of two souls who had found each other against all odds and loved each other beyond measure. Their story became legend in Genoa, told to wide-eyed children and young couples starting their own journeys. The tale of the cowboy who saved a girl from a terrible fate and the girl who saved him right back. The story of choosing love, of building something beautiful from broken pieces, of two people who proved that happy endings were not just for fairy tales. And in that small valley in Nevada, under the vast western sky, their love lived on forever, a testament to the truth that real love, the kind that saves and heals and endures, is the greatest adventure of all.